Happy Monday, Wizards. It's Dev in a Box here to talk about some MH3 spoilers from over the weekend. I'm recording at 9:52 a.m. my time on Monday, the day after the weekend. So sorry about the timing on this one, and also sorry about the box structure. There's a variety of reasons for both. I know you absolutely hate when I'm in a little box in the video, but honestly, I know a lot of you don't care either. I see your comments. You're watching me or listening to me really while you're on your lunch break, or maybe you're sitting down to dinner. A lot of people watch me while eating. That's good to know you can stomach that, but a lot of you are doing your dishes or your laundry. You just want something to listen to. I'm going to provide that content in the form of Modern Horizons 3 spoilers from the weekend today. Now, as usual, we're going to cut things back to make sure you see just the relevant stuff, relevant to me at least. I don't know what kind of metric that is, but also as usual, there's a number of lower rarity cards that I do want to look at. Because common, uncommon, neither of these things are synonyms for bad. So let's start with Ghostfire Slice today. 3 mana, 2 and a red for an insto. Devoid, has no color. This spell costs 2 less to cast. If an opponent controls a multicolored permanent, Ghostfire Slice deals 4 to any target. 4 is a lot of damage. So much damage, man. To any target. And there's a way that this can be just a better lightning bolt, which is really cool. Also doesn't care about like protection from red. I guess I have to point that out. That might matter from time to time, but still just a cool spell. You know, it's a reason that it's kind of jerking the curtain and starting the day. You know, it's not the best thing we'll look at today, but I still thought that it stood out. This, along with Glyph Elemental, 2 mana, 1 and a white for an enchant creature. It's an elemental. A 2/2 with Bestow. The Bestow is 1 and a white, and it also has landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you put a +1/+1 counter on Glyph Elemental. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1 for each +1/+1 counter on Glyph Elemental. That's kind of weird wording, but I do like the way that they've sandwiched like Bestow and Landfall onto the same card here. I like that if the creature it's attached to dies, it keeps the +1/+1 counters, which is actually pretty problematic. The Bestow cost is low here. You get to turn any creature into like a bristly bill, sort of. Just a really neat package on this thing, and I wanted to spotlight it. Same thing they said about me in college. Emrakul's Messenger is 1 and a blue for a 2/1 Eldrazi Fairy Rogue. Neat creature types. Also has Devoid. No colors. Also has Flying. That's a more relevant ability most of the time. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, create a 0/1 colorless Eldrazi spawn creature token with sacrifice this creature, add colorless mana. There's a bunch of these in the set, and we've seen cards like this before that make these little spawn dudes, but I just want to say that I like this. I don't know that it's going anywhere, like in Modern, doesn't look super playable, but, you know, they've kind of mishmashed abilities on this card too, just like that last aura we saw has like Landfall and Bestow. That's cool. This one not only, I guess, has Devoid, well, sure. This also has the draw your second card each turn ability and the ramp on it. So like draw your second card each turn ramp is actually pretty relevant on a 2-drop. So I wouldn't like put it past this seeing some amount of play, but ultimately I just think it's a cool effect to have access to in Magic at large. Maybe I am saying this is a great card. Look, don't shoot the messenger. Anyway, it's in the name of the card. Up next is Eviscerator's Insight. I have to be excited about this because of the kind of Magic player I am. This is 2 mana, it's 1 and a black for an instant. As an additional cost to cast it, sacrifice an artifact or creature, draw 2 cards. Flashback, 4 and a black. So like this effect, but also with flashback. And you can sack artifacts to it as well. It's just really, really good, man. This is going in like a lot of stuff. I think I have to order a playset of this, but not to go in one deck. Right? I have 3 commander decks in a cube that actually potentially more than 1 cube that this goes into. I just a little corrupted conviction or reckless bargain or just a million cards already printed like this, right? But none of them have flashback. And in Commander, at least, that's really exciting. I don't know about Modern, probably not, but like who cares? It's really cool Magic card. I love that we have this with flashback now. But we also have Ethereum Terramander, a single black mana for an artifact creature, which is a Salamander Drake. They just couldn't come up with one or the other, right? It's a 1/1 with flying, and it can block only creatures with flying. It also has 6 and a black to adapt 4. This ability costs 1 less to activate for each other artifact you control. So the adaptability has affinity for artifacts, another sort of like mashup of abilities, right? But you could kind of call this a 2 mana 5/5 flyer. It is almost that, so like I felt like we probably needed to spotlight it. I don't know how easy it is to actually make this work, but you know, in a world where maybe you have some artifact lands or something like that, and you Frogmite and Mirror Enforcer and a bunch of like free stuff, then like suddenly this becomes really easy to make work. And honestly, I just kind of wish it was common. I think it would be too much at common for a common, but still, I wish it were pauper playable above all. So I'm not really sure where else it goes, but 2 mana 5/5 flyer if you do a little bit of work. a lot, kind of a lot. 6 artifacts is a lot, but still, you might be able to make it happen. Entrancing Flesh Warper is next. I think this could have been like sort of rare given the kind of abilities that it has, but I'm glad that it's uncommon. 2 and a colorless for a 2/2 Eldrazi drone. Whenever you cast a colorless spell, you get a spawn token. Whenever another colorless creature enters the battlefield under your control, Flesh Warper deals a damage to each opponent. So it works like with itself, you know, whenever you cast a colorless spell, you get a spawn, which in turn does a damage to each opponent. This is probably a thing you can do infinite stuff with, but let's not focus on that too much right now. Just really neat that like it makes a dude that makes a colorless mana. So if there's any like loops that require mana, then like they help you get that. So I don't know, that's really good. But ultimately, I just kind of like both of these abilities. These are both really, really good triggers. You know that I like anything that deals like incremental damage. So I'm basically always going to like that, especially with effects that are able to produce a lot of like artifact creature tokens at the same time. This is really, really good to have on the table. But, you know, again, it just works with itself. Just really, really cool card here that I kind of want to play with. I hate that there's colorless in the casting cost, but, you know, there's a lot of extant, you know, already existing, you know, commander decks that are basically oops all colorless. This goes into every single one of them, and it probably goes into the Eldrazi decks too. The last uncommon we're going to look at today is Charitable Levy here. This is 2 mana, 1 and a white for an enchantment. Non-creature spells cost 1 more to cast, but whenever a player casts a non-creature spell, you put a collection counter on Charitable Levy. Then, if there are 3 or more collection counters on it, you can sack it. Well, you don't. It's not a May ability. You have to sack it if there are 3 counters on it. If you do, draw a card. Then you may search your library for a plains, put it on the battlefield, tap, shuffle. This is a really, really neat card right here. Kind of a tax effect, so that makes your ears perk up a little bit in multiple formats, because these tax effects are usually pretty cool. So kind of a Thalia, right? A Thalia that's not susceptible to removal, a fatal push, cut down, whatever. So that's pretty cool. And it eventually pays you back. Like, and you can cast the non-creature spells too. I want to point that out. Like, it counts you casting them, but especially on a commander table, this is going to pop like pretty quickly and get a card and ramp, and that's awesome. And in the meantime, it does tax people. So in a way, it kind of pays for itself. You have to be a good lawyer to argue this, but you know, it costs 2 mana, but it's cost your opponents 3 mana by the time it pops. So in a way, it's paid you back a mana. That's how I'll argue that. But yeah, still 2 mana, draw a card, ramp in white. That's really good. Whether it's commander or maybe even 1v1, but I imagine the case for this in 1v1 is a little tougher. But hey, Thalia is a really good card in and of herself. So if Thalia drew you a card and ramped and was not killable by like 1 mana removal that's in every main deck, then like she'd probably be a better card. So you know, maybe. So this is not a human, and it doesn't have 2 power in first strike the way Thalia does, so that's probably a deal breaker. But still, I just really, really like this and wanted to point it out as sort of our premier uncommon of the day. Moving to a section I've got labeled rares in quotation marks, because like I think some of these are not like the best rares in the world, but we're still going to look at them. They're rare, you know. First, we have Invert Polarity, the worst card image that I have of the day. Not saying the art's bad. I'm saying the actual quality of the image isn't great. Sorry about that. This is the best one I could find. 2 blue and a red, so 3 mana for an instant. Choose a spell and flip a coin. If you win the flip, gain control of that spell, and you can choose new targets for it. If you lose the flip, counter that spell. Really, really neat. This could... It's funny this is in the rares category, because this might actually be absolutely backbreaking, but it also says flip a coin on it, so I just instinctively don't like it. But I will say this one, if you lose the flip, it's just cancel. And like that might be fine, you know what I mean? But who's playing cancel in Modern? That said, if you win the flip, you win the game of Magic, so I don't know. maybe this is like way more powerful than I think it is. Next is Kudo, King Among Bears. This is a green and a white for a 2/2 legendary bear. Other creatures have base power and toughness 2/2 and are bears in addition to their other types. So like, again, should this be in the rares category? I'm not actually super sure, but I'm also pretty sure I don't know. I don't think this is great. in 1v1. I'm not even sure how great it is in Commander, although there's probably some really fun stuff that you can do with it. I do like that it works with all the like creatures with power 2 or less do a thing. You know, there's plenty of cards that are sort of on theme with that right now. Also kind of interesting with anything that says that it can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less, because everything has power 2 or less, including the thing with the text on it. But still, hear me out. There's probably ways you can break that symmetry, but still. This is a cool card. You know, and it probably should have been in the sort of commander corner bit of the video, but I don't know, man. I want to say that this is trying to be a thing, and it probably isn't. Should probably go hibernate somewhere. I could take you, Kudo. That's a huge bear. There's no way. But not wanting to get involved in any bear discourse, let's move on to Kappa Cannoneer. This is 6 mana. I was going to say 3 mana. This is 6 mana, 5 and a blue for a 4/4 artifact creature. Turtle Warrior. Awesome. It also has Improvise, which means you can tap your artifacts to help you pay for it. It also has Ward 4, which is huge. But whenever Kappa Cannoneer or another artifact enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on Cannoneer, and it can't be blocked this turn. This, I think, is kind of like the sleeperiest card that we'll look at today. Possibly the sleeperiest card we've looked at so far. It doesn't have affinity, which is lame, but, you know, like some copies, like the first copy will help you cast subsequent copies, which is pretty cool. Ward 4 is kind of hexproof. Like a little bit. Ward 4 is kind of hexproof. That's nice. Let's pretend it has hexproof. If this is effectively, okay, a 1 mana 5/5, because the way its ability is worded, it just goes ahead and gets a +1/+1 counter when it comes into play. That's neat. I think that's cool. If you can give it haste, it can't be blocked that turn too. So neat. But this is kind of an affinity-ish, an affinity-light thing. So, you know, if you've got a few artifacts on the table, you can tap them down. Suddenly a mana or 2, maybe 2 mana for a 5/5 Ward 4, more or less unblockable most turns of the game, becomes a 6/6, becomes a 7/7. The ability is not limited to once per turn. So, like, if you get like 2 or 3 little artifact tokens for whatever reason, then suddenly it gets a bunch of counters, and it still has Ward. Like, I don't know, man. I put it in the rares section, but like I still think there might actually be like something to this. You know, again, maybe I'm just thinking with standard brain because the card would be really good there. But in modern, it's just kind of, well, you know, it's a turtle. But, you know, I still think like if you get enough artifacts and play quickly enough, this could be pretty as close as it gets to a finisher. You know, you get like a patchwork automaton sort of. Like a teething wormlet that doesn't trigger, you know, what am I trying to say? That triggers more than once each turn. There we go. I'm tired. But either way, I don't know. I think there might be more than meets the eye with this thing. Cool card. Now, the last in my rares section is Abstruse Appropriation, a card that's going to look really neat to a lot of people and probably pretty decent commander if I had to guess. 4 mana, 2, a white and a black for an instant with Devoid. Exile target non-land permanent. You may cast that card for as long as it remains exiled. You may spend colorless mana as though it were mana of any color to cast that spell. I think a lot of people are just kind of auto-completing this last bit of the sentence in their mind, and just thinking they can spend mana of any color to cast the spell. Now, it has to be colorless. You can spend colorless mana as though it were mana of any color to cast the spell. So it's a little bit harder to actually cast the thing you exile than it might first appear to some people that are used to Magic the Gathering card language, and they're like, oh, I can just use mana of any color. No, you can't. Not quite, but still. 4 mana, instant speed, non-land permanent, exile. These are all kind of good words, but I think 4 mana is just probably too much for this in like 1v1 competitive environments. But again, when it comes to commander, like maybe you're willing to pay this cost. Maybe you've got ways of facilitating the colorless requirement on the thing to recast it. And if you can exile a non-land permanent and recast it in commander, you're not going to like win the game off that, not even close, but it's a lot of value. So this is kind of the last card in the rares for a reason. I'm not going to spend as long justifying it as I did the turtle, but it's a good magic card on a lot of levels. Now, we had a couple of different emerge cards today, and they kind of get their own category here. Let's look at Crabomination first. You just had this name locked and loaded. This name has been on deck forever, and you're like, sure, have it. It's 6 mana, 4 and 2 black for a 5/5 crab demon with emerge from artifact for 5 and 2 black. That means that you can sack an artifact and then pay the difference in the artifact's mana cost and this thing's emerge cost. So the idea is to get this down as 2 mana for a 5/5. And has a cool ETB. When it enters the battlefield, an opponent exiles the top card of their library, a card at random from their graveyard, and a card at random from their hand. You may cast a spell from among cards exiled this way without paying its mana cost. That's how it's done. That's what we want to see. You may cast a spell without even caring about mana at all. That's so much better. So if you're able to get a 2 mana 5/5 that nearly guarantees you a second card, then yeah, I think you're doing okay. But it's going to be really difficult to get a 2 mana 5/5 without putting in a whole lot of legwork first. Crap have lots of legs. That's the joke. Either way, I think it's going to be a tough one to crack because it's pretty hard shelled. I could go all day. I'm in a bit of a pinch as far as time goes. Man, I got to get my claws out of this one. Either way, cool card, really cool design. I love the name. The art is amazing. And honestly, again, the design, just in total, the design is great. And I think if you can crack this open and dip it in butter and do something with it, like maybe. But altogether, I'm not too sure about it. Other emerge dude we saw was Harrogast, Erupting Nullkite, 9 mana for a 6/6 legendary Eldrazi dragon. That's a scary combination of things. It has emerge 6 and 2 red at 8 mana, but the way this emerge works is you sack a creature and pay the emerge cost reduced by the creature's mana value. When you cast this spell, you may exile your hand. If you do, draw 3 cards. Flying. Each creature spell you cast has emerge. The emerge cost is equal to its mana cost. So, commander card. Now there are ways, I guess, there are ways to get creatures with a technically high mana cost onto the table really quickly and then emerge into this, but I'm still not too sure. Like, even at the ceiling, 2 mana, 6/6 flying. What era of Magic are we in where I'm like, well, 2 mana, 6/6 flying, draw 3. That could be better. Again, you have to do an awful lot of, work. You have to really push that boulder up a hill for the first couple of turns of the game before you get this on turn 4 or 3. And even if you get it on 3, like, is it good in Modern? I'm not too sure. But I know that in Commander, this very last line of text is making people drool. You're going to need a bucket because for that wet, I'm not going to do the joke. Each creature spell you cast has emerge. The emerge cost equal to its mana cost is something that's going to make Commander players need a change of underwear, so I should probably put this card on the list. It seems dope there. Speaking of Commander, that's how you segue, baby. We're going to look at a few Commanders now, and then a couple of cards that I think are like decent in Commander, but probably nowhere else, which could have been half the video so far. I feel like I say that with like every card, but let's look at some actual Commanders here, starting with Nadu, Winged Wisdom. This is 3 mana, 1 a green and a blue for a 3/4 legendary bird wizard with flying. Not bad stats, right? 3 mana, 3/4 flyer. Creatures you control have, whenever this creature becomes the target of a spell or ability, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a land card, put it on the battlefield. Otherwise, put it in your hand. This ability triggers only twice each turn. They give us 2 times. 2 times with this ability. So, okay, well, I guess. Okay, so maybe I've snuck in a card that might be good in Modern, but I highly doubt it. 3 mana, it's not boltable. It's unboltable. Let's go a little bit. Like, they tried to make it a little bit more playable in Modern, but still not sure that it actually is. But still, what this actually is a 3 mana, 3/4 flyer that if your opponent tries to remove it with spot removal, you get to either draw a card or ramp. It's awesome. Pretty good. If you have a better target for removal, then the same thing happens. If they want to remove your actually decent creature that's a real threat to them, then again, you might draw a card or ramp. One of those 2 things is going to happen. And yeah, they have one of those turns where they want to remove more than one guy, then they better do it in the right order, is all I'm saying. So, really, really kind of neat card. Also, do note that it's not a creature, like a spell or ability your opponent controls. So, you can target this with a protection spell or a pump spell or some other similar whatever you want. And then suddenly, also its ability too. It's not just spell, it's ability. So, that's really neat. Whether you're targeting with auras or just like activated abilities from artifacts or creatures you control, like, let's go. You always get to either draw or ramp. So, especially if you can find a way to facilitate it the turn it comes into play and get that draw or ramp, like, things could actually kind of get there a little bit. So, I kind of really like this dude, but I think he's especially great as a commander. Next is Ashling Flame Dancer, 4 mana, 2 and 2 red for a 4/4 legendary elemental shaman. You don't lose unspent red mana as steps and phases in. So it's like an Omnath disguised as Ashling from Lorwyn. That's neat. Magecraft. Whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, discard a card and then draw a card. If it's the second time this ability is resolved this turn, Ashling deals 2 damage to each opponent and each creature they control. If it's the third time, my friend, you get 4 red mana. So why don't I just pay you back for all that mana you spent casting spells? This is actually really cool. I don't think this is Modern playable, just at 4 mana, but what I will say is that this is a ridiculous mono red commander. There's already a number of ridiculous mono red commanders, but boy, this is super tempting, right? You just get to sling spells around. I love Magecraft as kind of an ability, which it's really just like a trigger whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, but that's a sick ability. And the first time you rummage, the second time damage to everything except your guys, which is cool. And the third time, again, it pays you back for the spells you cast. I heard you wanted to cast more spells and get more mage crap triggers or whatever, so absolutely stupid. Absolutely stupid. You're going to get to discard a card and draw a card every single time, by the way, so that's also gross. There's a very, very cool magic card that I think is probably going to be like reasonably cheap, I would assume, even though it's mythic, to spend to grab a copy of. And if I was ever going to build a mono red commander, it might seriously be this, although I feel like I say that once every couple of weeks, so I should probably move on to the next thing. Too expensive anyway, right, to build mono red commander? I know that sounds ridiculous, but you need like Wheel of Fortune and stuff to build that one. I can't do it. Null Drifter is 7 mana. Just proxy it, Dev. I hear you in the comments section. 7 mana for Null Drifter. This is a 4/4 Eldrazi Elemental. When you cast it, you draw 2 cards. Also has flying and Annihilator 1 when it attacks. Defending player has to sack a permanent. But this has Evoke 2 and a blue. Speaking of Lorwyn, Evoke sighting, people. You may cast a spell for its Evoke cost. If you do, it's sacked when it enters the battlefield. So, kind of a Mole Drifter. You see how it's like a... Am I the only one? Anyway, this is a cool version of Mole Drifter, and dare I say, kind of a better version of Mole Drifter in a lot of ways. It's really cool. Any deck can technically play this, but obviously, if you want to evoke it, there you go. You got to play blue, but I don't know that just like Divination is worth seeing play, but that's what everyone said when Mole Drifter first came out, 15, 17, whatever, I'm old, years ago. And that turned out to be a really good magic card, both in Commander and even back then in Standard. Mole Drifter was gross. It's a really good card. And this one is even more threatening, twice as threatening, power toughness wise, and also has Annihilator, which is more than, I was going to say not nothing, it's way more than that. So I also like that it's a cast trigger. It's not an ETB trigger, which is very good. So really, really cool stuff. I think it's mostly just upgraded Mole Drifter, so it is a very good magic card. I don't think that's super arguable, but what I will say is I don't think it's like modern play. Is Mole Drifter modern playable? Is it? I don't think so. I don't know that this is either, but it is a very cool card to have access to in other formats. Like Commander. I'm talking about Commander. But this is my favorite Commander card of the day. I'm getting a copy of this. Hope it's not like $20. I don't think so. This is Ripples of Undeath. 2 mana, 1 and a black for an enchantment. At the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, mill 3 cards. Then you may pay 1 and 3 life. If you do, put a card from among them cards into your hand. This is like a Sylvan Library, but it's black. This is good. This is a good magic card. You do have to pay mana, and I hate that. I've seen a lot of people be like, geez, 3 life. God, 3 lives. Oh, God, geez, dude. But no, I don't really care. I play with Dark Confidant. I play with Dark Confidant. I play with Phyrexian Arena. I play with Sylvan Library. That's 4 life. I think you can pay the 8 life to put 2 cards in your hand from Library, and I've done it. I paid the max life, I guess is what I'm saying. But still, the 1 mana I'm like way more worried about, because if I get this on turn 2, and then I play it, on turn 3, I get the ability finally. Like this puts me down to 2 mana on turn 3. That sucks. So like the mana I think is like a way bigger deal, but I still like this card like a lot. I think in Commander this is a really, really sick card for black to have access to. Maybe I just have too many fond memories with Sylvan Library, and I've always wanted my favorite, color in Magic. I love swamps. To have a Sylvan Library, so I guess we have. It's called Phyrexian Arena. It's called Dark Confidant. It's called like all the cards like that. But still, I just think this is a really, really sweet piece to have access to. And even if it's not drawing you cards, it's milling you cards, which is also great. So awesome. I really hope this is like a buck, because I want this card in my collection. Now on to Energy, which gets its own category today, because the Energy stuff we saw was rare and finally pays off Energy. I keep saying it like all season. Like I can't wait to see what we get that actually pays off all this energy production, and we saw 2 of them today. Chthonian Nightmare is probably not as good. Maybe I'm wrong, but it's trying to be Recurring Nightmare. That's the joke here, is this card is attempting to be Recurring Nightmare, but it's not. It's 2 mana, it's 1 and a black for an enchantment. When it ETBs, you get 3 energy. You can pay X energy and sack a creature, and also return Nightmare to its owner's hand. To return target creature card with mana value X from your yard to the battlefield, activate only as a sorcery. So what's cool about this that wasn't the case on Recurring Nightmare is that, first of all, I should point out, Recurring Nightmare is 3 mana, and this is 2 mana. So the fact that it pops back to your hand is less punishing, right? Also, this can generate more value technically, I guess, like on more levels. on more axes. This gets you like potentially more value than Recurring Nightmare, because you could always like get your 3 energy when it comes into play and return a 2-drop from your yard to the battlefield and pop this back to your hand and then play it again, and now you have 4 energy, you see? So you're generating energy with it if you're getting like 1s and 2s out of your yard. So I don't know. It's kind of something. Ultimately, I don't want to make a mess of like a massive mistake here, because I remember all the way back then when people were like, oh, Recurring Nightmare is kind of it's pretty expensive. You got to sack a guy. And like, turns out it's part of the best deck of the summer. So, and maybe one of the more legendary decks of all time. So I don't want to make the same mistake here. This is cheaper and again, generates more value technically, but you know, Recurring Nightmare gets anything back. And this is way more limited than that. And cares about, you know, a mechanic that is a little limited in scope, to be honest. So I'm not super excited about it, but you know, I like a good reanimation spell. I always have. But I think that the better spell, it's not Charitable Levy. It's Ether Revolt. It's this spell right here. 4 mana, 2 and 2 red for an enchantment with Revolt. As long as a permanent you controlled left the battlefield this turn, if a source you control would deal non-combat damage to an opponent or a permanent an opponent controls, it deals that much damage plus 2 instead. Whenever you get 1 or more energy, Ether Revolt deals that much damage to any target. So this really, really cool, because this is like the potentially the best, just in terms of the text box, the best energy payoff we've ever seen. Now, the mana cost is holding it back a good bit. Like 4 mana is kind of a lot for it to be like the premier energy thing in Modern, right? But at the same time, it works with itself. I like that. If you had something leave the battlefield this turn, then whenever this deals damage to targets, it bolts them, which is, whoo, it's so good. Like, it can't do more than that, right? So, like, if you, like, let's say I play, it's back there. Let's say I play Chthonic Nightmare with this on the table to get my 3 energy. That's 3 damage. That's pretty good. But if something left the battlefield that turn, that's 6 damage. As a matter of fact, I sacrifice a permanent to Chthonic Nightmare and I put it back in my hand, and then I play Chthonic Nightmare and get my 3 energy, and I just deal 6 anyway. That's gross. They actually combo in a fun way, but I just think that first, I should point this out too. It's neat when they name cards after sets. I like that, but still, what I like about this is the massive, absolutely massive energy payoff. First of all, and the fact that like it's kind of an aristocrat's payoff too, like maybe in Prosper or something that's playing like Treasure or something like that. It's not even if something died, it's if anything left the battlefield, right? Any permanent whatsoever. And again, it didn't even have to touch your graveyard. Like, if it got bounced or blinked or whatever, right? Absolutely gross. Very, very easy to facilitate once it's on the table. And even if you haven't had a permanent leave the battlefield this turn, even if it isn't like quote unquote turned on, it's still doing a bunch of damage to your opponent if you're generating energy at the clip you want to. So I don't know, man. I really think there's something to it. 4 mana is too much, but maybe, you know, hate to relegate it to Commander, but at least there, you know, this seems like the sort of key piece to actually winning a game with an energy deck in a big, like, 40 life 4-player format. So I really like it there, but just ultimately I like it in general. Really good design on a card, which is what I look for most of the time when I'm judging Magic cards. Do I like, you know, the design? Not necessarily like the competitive playability, but just like, is the card cool? Absolutely, I like this. Now, the next category is, I guess we'll call them maybes. These aren't rares, but I guess a lot of the rares were maybes too, weren't they, Tim? But still, a lot of the maybes here, I think are kind of cuspy. And a couple of them I'm going to give a little bit more credit than some people, like Arch of Innovation. Yeah, we'll get to it. I'll slander it here in a second, but this is a land, and when it ETBs tapped, unless you control an island. You can tap it for a blue mana, and you can also pay a blue mana and tap it, and the next spell you cast this turn has Improvise. Is this a Tolarian Academy? No, it's the worst version. It's like the wussiest version of a Tolarian Academy they could have possibly printed, but it's also, again, just like a lot of these lands that we've been looking at this season, like super low opportunity cost to put this in your deck. But this one requires like more actual deck building concession than a lot of the other ones do, because you need a ton of artifacts to make this more, you know, anywhere close to a Tolarian Academy. You need at least 2 artifacts on the table. Really, you need at least 3 artifacts before it starts generating mana even theoretically, because again, it's improvised. You still have to tap the artifacts, which might matter, you know. Some of these artifacts might be mana artifacts anyway, which would kind of defeat the point. But, so you have to have very specific artifacts out. You have to have a way of producing a ton of artifacts to where this actually produces real value for you. So I imagine it's actually kind of tough to break this card, really. But, you know, they've learned their lesson with cards like this before. So this is probably more of a novelty sort of reference than anything else, but with effects like this, you always do have to kind of watch out. So like I said, I'm giving it slightly more credit than other people. This could still be really dangerous. And again, we get to the commander table where, you know, it's turn 5, so I've got 40 artifacts on, you know, suddenly this is very, very dangerous. We saw another one of these lands over the weekend. I think this might be the last one. This is Monumental Stone Row. This is a land that ETB's tapped unless you have a plains. You can tap it for a white mana, but you can also pay 2 and 2 white, 4 mana, and tap it. Don't go look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal a historic card from among them, put it into your hand, put the rest on the bottom of your library in a rando order. Artifacts, legendaries, and sagas are historic. So 5 total mana when you think about it, because you have to tap this too. So 5-ish mana to put a card into your hand, and it has to be in the top 5, and it has to be one of these 3 specific cards. So again, I won't say the opportunity cost is necessarily low as some of these that we've seen in the cycle, because your deck has to be built a pretty specific way to actually fit this card. It's not just free, you know? Especially in terms of deck building, but still pretty good. I'm not sure that it's really super modern playable unless we're talking about control, and it would have to be a really wonky control deck in order to really be able to get like true value off of this card. So, you know, I'm just not really sure what the niche is in like competitive Magic, but again, this is one of those where it's probably got a life in Commander if I had to guess. You know, 5 mana is actually, believe it or not, 5 mana for the activated ability on a land is a lot even for Commander, but it is a pretty desirable ability. Next is Necro Dominance, which is a little bit like the blue land. I'm not going to say this is just a piece of garbage like some people are saying, but it is a fun reference. If nothing else, 3 black mana for a legendary enchantment with skip your draw step. This is starting to sound familiar. At the beginning of your end step, if you may pay any amount of life. If you do, draw that many cards. Your maximum hand size is 5. If a card or token would be put into your graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. So no loops. You don't get 7 cards or 8 or 9 or 10 or whatever. You know what I mean? All of this happens at the beginning of the end step, so you will never have more than 5 cards in your hand unless you would want to discard down to 5, which I'm sure some people will do, just crap the perfect hand to 5. It's what we used to do with Necropotence anyway. But that said, even the perfect hand to 5 is pretty good. That's kind of my point here, is that no, it's not Necropotence, and they've like, you know, neutered it in as many ways as possible. This has multiple snips in the sack, you know, but at the same time, it's still it's still pay life and draw cards. And that's really good. Don't worry about skip your draw step. I know some people that have never seen Necropotence are going to be like, skip your draw step. Geez, card sucks. And like a lot of us said that about Necropotence too. I was 11 years old when Necropotence came out, and I was like, this is the worst Magic card I've ever seen in my life. And then it won a Pro Tour. Like half the field was on it. It was good. Necropotence winner was a time to be alive. Actually experienced that with my body. But either way, this is still a good card, especially considering it's modern playable. You know, like 3 mana craft a perfect hand. Like starting on turn 3 is potentially pretty dangerous. But again, this is just nullified enough to where it's probably not much to worry about, and it's more just a cute little reference. Look at the cute reference, but you know, don't poke the bear is all I'm saying. This could actually be playable. Next is Birthing Ritual. Just really a lot of references. They're coming at you with the nostalgia today. Just making cards worse. You know what I mean? See how that works. It's 2 mana, 1 and a green for an enchantment. At the beginning of your end step, if you control a creature, look at the top 7 cards of your library. Then you may sack a creature if you want to. If you do, you may put a creature card with mana value X or less from among those cards onto the battlefield, where X is 1 plus the sacrificed creature's mana value. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. It's a birthing pod! It's not, though. How about a birthing knot? How about a birthing I'm nodding off to sleep with this? I don't know. It's probably okay. It's mythic for a reason. Probably because it's a birthing pod reference. Oh, but still, maybe, you know, this weekend was a weekend of like side prints, really downgrades of existing cards that used to be really important. And I don't want to make the same mistake. Like, not only are they downgrades of cards that used to be important, they're like all cards that everyone thought sucked. Like when they first came out, I remember I'm a very old man. And when Birthing Pod first came out, there were a lot of people who were like, well, this card's not very good. It's not going to do anything. It's like, whatever, dude. Birthing Pod is a gross card. This I'm not too sure about. That's all I can really say. I know you might be disappointed, but I don't really want to go too far one way or the other on this, which might seem a little like I'm copping out or whatever. But if I had to go one way of the fence or the other, I'd probably fall on not very good, to be honest. But, you know, possibly Commander playable if anything else, but that gets a little bit boring. You know, I've said that about a lot of the cards in this video, but, you know, as far as competitive Modern, there's a reason this is in the maybes category. But again, if I had to like really come down one way or the other decisively, I would probably say the chances are no. But on to Recruiter of the Guard, the last card in this section, because I think it's the closest to action. We just looked at the Birthing Pod and the Necropotence, but I'm pretty sure Recruiter's good too. This is 3 mana, 2 and a white for a 1/1 human soldier, and when it ETBs, you may search your library for a creature card with toughness 2 or less, reveal it, put it into your hand, shuffle it up, baby. So this is just a tutor. This is just a creature tutor with a body, right? So that's okay. Yeah. Again, Modern playability, I can't be too sure about, but this does make sure that you go and get like anything you need for combos specifically. I think that's probably where this card shines. If you're trying to put together some some little combos there, and trying to get some pizza combos, put them in your mouth, maybe this will help you do that. I don't know. If this said search your deck for pizza combos, put them in your mouth, it'd be a really good card, but I still think it's a decent card with the text as printed. And again, broken record. Commander. But, you know, I have to say it, right? Because if I don't say it, people are going to be like, what's a good card in Commander in the comment section? But like, we all know. We can all read it. We see it. We all see the card is good in Commander. It's a creature tutor with a body, and that's probably a more relevant statement in Commander than it is in Modern, but I reserve the statement for both formats at this point. You know, it's got 2 relevant creature types. It's probably halfway decent in humans for finding like very important pieces in that deck. So I don't know. I will give this one a tiny shot in Modern, but you know, who wants to play a 3 mana 1/1? Not that many people, so I can't really say for sure this one's going to the top, baby. But like, there's a lot of good stuff this potentially can do, especially again if you're in that combo deck that needs like this is copies 5 through 8 of the most important creature in your deck. You'll probably take it. But before we get on to my favorite card, I guess of the day, is it even my favorite? It's probably just like maybe the best, most impactful card of the day. Let's look at some cards that are new to Modern. Let's look at some cards that were new to Modern. But it came out like let's get some cards. So let's take a look at Phyrexian Tower first. Holy crap. You know, Phyrexian Tower's in Modern. This is, in case you've never seen this is a legendary land. It taps for a colorless mana, or you can tap it and sack a creature to add 2 black mana. This is busted. This is a busted land. Maybe it doesn't look like it to you. It is, though. Sometimes things are objective rather than subject. This is objectively a broken land. The first like broken quote unquote Magic deck I ever played. Like really played in like, you know, competitive environments, like Sunday tournaments and stuff, was Yawgmoth's Bargain in like Urza's Destiny Standard. Actually, I think it was Mercadian Mass Standard because it had like Tooth of Ramos in it, but still. Really loved that deck. I will always love that deck, and this was a very, very key piece in that deck because you sacrifice your Academy Rector, and then like on turn 2, and then you go and get because you Dark Ritualed out Rector, and then you sacrifice it to Phyrexian Tower, and then you go and get your Yawgmoth's Bargain, and then you start rocking and rolling, baby. So that was just one broken thing this thing does, or did in the history of Magic. It's done plenty of other broken things, mostly with Academy Rector. Now that I think about it, it was the real all-star right there, but still, this is in Modern now, and that's absolutely gross. Hopefully, if nothing else, this drives the price of the card down. Grab one for Commander, that'd be nice. Still don't have a Saga one. There's a Saga one, which I would really love to have. That's a beautiful Magic card. I miss the Saga like yellow border for lands. It's so cool, but still. Enough about the old days. This is just a great card to have in Modern. Any Aristocrat style, like Blood Artist thing, maybe even D&T would love a card like this, but ultimately a card like this can like breathe life into whole other archetypes that aren't even real right now, so really cool to have Tower around. Again, just bookending it with this statement. This card is better than it looks if you think it looks bad. And if you know how good it is, you played against it probably. It's really good. But a weird one that's new to Modern is Sylvan Safekeeper. This is a green mana for a 1/1 human wizard. You can sack a land. Target creature you control gains Shroud till end of turn. I believe this was originally in Judgment. I don't want to get that wrong, but this is in like Odyssey, Torment, Judgment, that sort of like time period. And then what is more or less forgotten, I think that it was in a important deck. I want to say this is in the sideboard of like a World Championship deck or something at some point. So at one point, it was kind of an important Magic card, but it's been lost to time. Reprinted in a Commander product or two here and there, but now it's in Modern for the first time. It's a single green mana for a 1/1, sack a land, a creature you control gains Shroud. Had I already read it? Can't remember, but that's a really, really good ability. so good. It's got a relevant creature type too. It's a human wizard, so, you know, playing green, you like humans? Guy at least goes in the 15, you know, the sideboard. So really cool dude. I think that he can also breathe life into some archetypes that aren't like super real right now, because this is basically the cheapest possible way that you can protect a creature till end of turn. He makes sure that your important pieces stay out, whether you're playing some version of Poison or some version of Bogles or whatever you're trying to do, maybe a combo, again, a combo deck that needs to keep its pieces in place. This is an incredible like turn one play. So really like that Safekeeper is an option now. But final card of the day here is Winter Moon. Kind of another reference here. They're all references. It's 2 mana for an artifact. Players can't untap more than 1 non-basic land during their untap steps. So it's a Winter Orb just for non-basic lands, though, which is, in Modern, kind of a Winter Orb. No, I know. People play fetch lands, which basically means that they play basics, you know, like most Modern decks. So this isn't going to stop everybody all the time, but it is going to slow down quite a few decks, you know, like even some monocolored decks play a fair number of basics, especially considering a lot of monocolored decks will play a fetch or two here and there, just to thin their mana base out, right? So interesting card. Of course, it doesn't really matter against fetches, I guess, but still, one way or the other. Really cool card to have. Any deck can play it. Looks super duper annoying if you've never played against Winter Orb. It's annoying, mostly because it gets paired with other cards, but still. This does look super aggravating. The perfect sideboard card against certain matchups for, again, literally any single deck. Great in those monocolored aggro deck sideboards too, so watch out for that. Just incredible Magic card I have absolutely nothing bad to say about, and for the first time all video, I can say that I'm like pretty confident this sees Modern play. Like, even if it's just in the form of a sideboard card, you know, I still think that this is more than welcome seeing play. It's kind of a Winter Orb Blood Moon, right? Because like it cares about non-basic lands, but also so I see what you did. I see how you made those 2 cards kiss, and that's great. Again, your references. Big fan of your references. I really think they're trying to instill, you know, like 90s magic into some of these cards, and I appreciate the effort, but ultimately, I can't say this is my favorite card of the day, because it looks like the most irritating thing I've ever seen. But I guess I can't say that. I lived through Winter Orb and Stasis. I lived through Island Sanctuary Howling Mine. That's a deep cut right there, but boy, did it work. So stupid, but still. I've lived through way more annoying stuff than this, and that was at the beginning of playing Magic, so I'm pretty sure we can all tough it out. But one way or the other, this is obviously a relevant Magic card, so I should probably make it kind of I should give it the prize, you know, for like best card of the day, gold star, blue ribbon, all that. But that is Allski Kowalski. Hey, you want some more content? I got some more content. It's just not on this channel. Me and Power Dragon sat down a couple of days ago to talk about all of your hottest MTG takes. He asked you on Twitter to give your hot takes, and you gave a bunch. So we talked about maybe 10 or 12 different hot takes from fans over the weekend. Sat down to do that, and it is available on his channel to watch right now. So if you like when me and P-Dragon get together, then again, check out the link in the description. Go over there. We talked for a little over an hour. More than that. I think the video's cut down slightly. We had a lot of things to say about all of your different hot takes. So if you haven't seen it yet, go over to Power Dragon's channel, check that out. But of course, I'll leave links in the descriptions to all the other days we've done of previous seasons so far just to catch up if you need to. If you need to do as much catching up as I feel like I need to do, then I'll leave all those in the links in the description for you. You can also check out Twitch. Follow over there. We stream every single Thursday, usually about 9 p.m. EST, playing Magic, doing spoilers, talking wrestling, all kinds of stuff. Aside from that, of course, the Patreon. Final pitch of the video. If you want to, it's a single $1 a month to support the channel in this vast, incredible way that you might not possibly understand. I can't even do the pitch correctly, but still, $1 a month is all I ask. You'll get to vote on content around these parts, and yeah, really helps out a lot. So do all that stuff, and of course, like, subscribe, whatever. Even if you're not going to do that, I'm happy that you're here. Thanks for being around. Means a lot to me. Stick around to the end of the video. But anyway, that's all I got for this one. Love you guys. I'm Deb from The Place, and hopefully we'll see you again pretty soon with the normal, my whole body at regular size on your screen content. Anyway, I love you guys. I'm Deb from The Place. Thanks for watching, Wizards. That is Allski Kowalski. Take it easy, guys. Spread love and be kind.